as you all know, South Dakota is becoming home to many people who are not, well, English is not their first language. And the federal government has indicated that they expect the states to provide language services in the form of interpreters to people who come into our courts. Some people argue not only the criminal courts, but the civil as well. The South Dakota Supreme Court approximately 2 years ago created a group or a commission of what we deem to be all the players in the court system: judges, magistrate judges, criminal defense lawyers, prosecutors, the attorney general, sheriff, and court reporters, because they have to take it down. And we said, look at what other states are doing. And they did that, and it became very clear that there is no majority view other than all states are trying to play catch-up in providing these types of services. You have all kinds of issues like, do you have to be a certified interpreter to be an interpreter in court, and things like that. Glenn Severson, who I'm sure virtually all of you know, who's now a justice on our court, used to be a circuit judge in Sioux Falls, and he estimated at one time that he had done cases in, I believe, 15 or 16 different languages other than English. And so we are now, as a Supreme Court, taking this report and attempting to enact what we can. Some of the things are very inexpensive. Simply putting signs up at the clerk's offices saying that if you cannot understand the proceedings in English, we will provide you at public expense with an interpreter. And for rural areas, like what Mike's talking about, this is always not easy, because you may not have a person available locally proficient in that language. And you have to maybe use the telephone or the ITV to secure the services of an interpreter. Other proposals are a lot more expensive, and at this point the funding doesn't exist to enact them. So it's work in progress, Mike, a long rambling answer, but that's where we're at. That's just about a whole different other speech, and I'll cut it at that today. Any other questions? If not, thank you for your time, and if you have any suggestions. Oh, we got one? Where? Oh, okay. The question was, has there been any study to determine if there's enough work to keep the attorney busy in that rural community? Anecdotally, and it's simply anecdotally, I have not talked to rural attorneys that reported to me that they don't have enough work to keep them busy. Obviously, if the work's not there, that's a whole different issue. You can't send an attorney to a place where the work isn't there. But at least at this point, talking to county commissioners, talking to attorneys that are practicing in the area, law enforcement, all the players, we see no indication the work is not there. I mean, you've got a lot of people that are now driving 100 miles to get to an attorney because that's their only choice, thus the sign. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Well, we have in a way. We've gone with ITV. 10 years ago it didn't exist, and now it's in half the courthouses in the state. As an example, they had a DWI prosecution in northwest South Dakota, and the lady who was the defendant was deaf. So she and the judge were in that rural community sitting next to each other looking at the ITV, and the person doing the sign language was on the other end of the ITV in Rapid City. And I guess it worked well. I mean, that's kind of the thing you have to do, is think outside the box. And certainly we're willing to look at amending rules to make the practice of law in the rural areas easier. We don't have call of the calendar anymore, and I won't waste 90% of the people's time in here by trying to explain to you what it was. But, yeah, I mean, that's part of what you're going to hear at the end of this program this afternoon is my court administrator, Pat Dugan, talking about going to totally electronic filing, e-filing and everything, which we hope to have in this state in 3 years. So we are moving forward aggressively. That's going to be a great plus for maybe a rural attorney that has a practice in 3 or 4 surrounding counties as well as his or her home county by being able to do all that electronically. So any other questions? Oh, we got one? Okay.
Chief, one of the observations I have is that sometimes it's really not where you practice because you can do anything from anywhere that anybody in this room does. So it's really whether you're in a small town. But some of the problem is you can't be all things to all people anymore, which is usually used to be the norm. The medical model is that, you know, a general practitioner has got to have all, you know, basically without the practitioners, the specialists would starve. But I think the relationships in the small towns has really got to come from outside referral network because you can't do everything to those people. And I think, and if you try, there's a problem there. It isn't that there isn't work there, but you can't do everything for them, whether it's bankruptcy or some other areas that those lawyers that are out there have to have established relationships. And then, of course, you've got that client deal that nobody wants to give up a client to another attorney, but those are somewhat problematic because you hate to refer them out, but you have to. And I think the big towns or the big law firms need to understand that they really have a cultivated practice just from the small towns, you know, with big lawyers.
For those of you who don't know, that's Danny Spines. He's got a real practice in both Webster and Britain. And it's a point well taken. When I was a private practitioner, we did not do any divorce work because under the statute, the court could appoint the state's attorney to represent the interest of the child. We found an attorney in Aberdeen who we could refer all our divorce work to, and the reason he got the referrals is we always got our client back, and they came back satisfied. So those kinds of relationships are necessary, and I think they can be developed. Any other questions? You know, it's not very often you get to ask the Chief Justice questions. Usually I get to do the questioning. So this might be a rare opportunity for you. But any other questions? Up, one more. Okay.
With regard to the incentive program, Chief Justice, has the bar or law school considered maybe giving an incentive like they do in the medical area, where if you go to, let's say, Michigan or someplace, and you stay for 5 years, you reduce that amount that you have versus
The comment or question was, has there been any discussion about allowing you to work off student loans by going into a specific county for 5 years and getting basically a forgiveness of a percentage of your debt for every one of those 5 years? Yes, it has been discussed. It's worked successfully in other professions, and it's probably not a bad idea. Another idea that I've been told exists, but I've never been able to verify it in other professions such as medical and dental, is where a local community will spot a aspiring young student who they think is pretty sharp and make a deal with that person that if he or she agrees to come back to that community, they will underwrite a good portion of the education. And